Do you guys remember Ben 10? Remember how they made an Omnitrix toy for every show in the franchise? You had the classic one, the Alien Force one, the Ultimatrix, then the Omniverse one. I'll admit, I got every single one of these watches when I was younger. Well, except for the Omniverse one. The classic Ben 10 watch was called the Omnitrix FX. This one was awesome, but it couldn't be completely true to the show. It couldn't do the thing where the emblem went from an hourglass to a rhombus. No way they could emulate something like that. Instead, if you wanted to choose an alien, there was a little opening at the bottom of the hourglass with silhouettes of the aliens. The watch was overall a great toy. In the show, the Alien Force Omnitrix would display a hologram of the alien you wanted to choose, so the hourglass shape never changed. That was great since it made it easier to translate it to a toy while keeping it true to the show's version. For the holograms of the aliens, you would snap a plastic version of them onto the watch, and activating it would make the watch yell the alien's name.
Baba Booey.
You see, when you snapped the holograms onto the watch, it would activate certain switches around the emblem, making the watch yell an alien name. So obviously, each alien hologram activated different combinations of switches to trigger its respective voice line. If you were rich, you'd get all the alien holograms. If you were me though, you'd use toothpicks and press the tiny switches to get the watch to say the names, without needing the plastic holograms. Now, I have to say, the Alien Force Omnitrix is definitely the best Omnitrix toy they've made. It's probably the best translated one they've made, and it's the perfect size. The whole alien display thing is well emulated too. It's probably the only watch of the four that looks most natural on a wrist. The Ultimatrix is also pretty well translated, but they didn't do plastic holograms again. Instead, they used these lame discs that you had to shove into the watch. When you activated the watch, the disc would pop up and unravel. An issue I have is that inserting and removing the disc scuffs up the watch a bit. May not be an issue if you're some 10-year-old that'll eventually toss it out when you get to middle school, but sentimental people kind of want to preserve the quality of things like these. Anyway, they really just made the discs for the sake of doing something different. Would the plastic holograms have been a stale gimmick by the time Ultimate Alien came out? No. Those holograms were awesome. They totally could have continued them, except made holograms for the aliens that debuted in Ultimate Alien. That's like if Nintendo decided to make the new characters in Smash Ultimate amiibo cards instead of regular amiibo figures like the rest of the roster. The Omniverse Omnitrix is pretty good. This one's known as the Omnitrix Touch. It works just like it does in the show, except it doesn't have that hologram scroll thing. They totally could have made it though. It would just be a green translucent piece of plastic that snaps onto the top of the watch. Anyway, the gimmick of the watch is that it has little spots on the emblem that are touch sensitive, and will trigger certain sounds when touched. The gimmick isn't really stupid, so I don't mind it. There's not much else to say about this one since it was a pretty good watch. Time to compare the four watches. I'll start with the straps. The FX Omnitrix had these thin plastic straps that were embedded into the body of the watch, so it was harder to bend the straps the closer to the body they were. So that meant the straps would stick out a bit and add some width to the watch when it was on your wrist. The Alien Force Omnitrix had hinged straps instead of embedded ones, so if you were to pick up the watch from its body, the straps would flop down. This made it look better when having it on your wrist, as it would perfectly cuff it. Now, the thing that's bad about these straps is how stubborn they are. It's really difficult to bend them compared to the first Omnitrix. The Ultimatrix's strap was just a fat green Velcro strap that looped through the body. I'd say it's lazy design, but it's the most comfortable strap of the four watches. I guess I don't really like it because it makes it less like the show's watch. You see, the Ultimatrix in the show was just a cuff. If you wanted to take it off, it would enlarge to easily slip off, and when you wanted to put it back on, it would shrink back. Obviously, you can't do that with a plastic toy. Plus, not everyone in the world has the same sized wrist, so they had to go with the Velcro strap. If it were up to me though, I probably would have made the strap equal to the width of the Ultimatrix, so it's a little closer to how the show had it. The Omniverse Omnitrix is hinged like the Alien Force one, but the straps are way more flexible. These are probably the best straps of the four watches. Now I'll talk about the overall size of the watches. The first Omnitrix has great dimensions, width a little longer than length, especially since the straps aren't hinged, but it's decent. The height is perfect as it doesn't stick out too much. It's probably the thinnest of the four watches. The Alien Force one has perfect dimensions. It is a little taller than the first Omnitrix though. Of the four, this is probably the best watch to have on your wrist. It's the least bulky one. The Ultimatrix is pretty bulky, considering it's the longest of the four watches. It's also taller than both of the previous ones. Now, the Omniverse Omnitrix is the only reason I made this section. Look how much this thing sticks out of your wrist. It's just as tall as the Ultimatrix, but it seems worse because its length and width are the same, so it almost makes it seem taller. And yeah, I understand it's big because it's storing a decent bit of tech, but I kind of wish it was a little smaller. The only person I think could pull this off is Shaq. I mean, huge watch for a huge guy. That's pretty much all I have to say when it comes to comparing them. So, I've been talking about all the main versions of these toy watches, but there were a lot of crappy spin-off watches that no one asked for. Along with the FX Omnitrix, there was a projector watch. Turned to a wall and you could display whatever was on these little discs you fed it. The watch interface was pretty much exactly like the FX one, except it had a lens on it where the alien display was on the original. The lens was just so big, it just looked stupid and out of place. There was also an Omnitrix LCD game, which was also a little lame. Instead of an hourglass design on the body, it had a little square screen that you could play a minigame on. It also had an option to use it like a regular Omnitrix, except it would play animations. I'd say the regular mode makes it a little more like the show's Omnitrix, but the overall design just makes it a bit unappealing. Because there's more tech involved, the watch is really fat, so it'll stick out a lot if you wear it. Also, because of the LCD display and a lack of an hourglass shape, it just looks like the front of it is broken, you know what I mean? So it's just not as good as the FX Omnitrix. For Alien Force, they also made a projector watch, but you already know how I feel about these. They're dumb.
I don't want to turn into these lame aliens. I want to turn into Gwen and Kevin.
Surprisingly, this is the only spin-off watch for Alien Force. On to the Ultimatrix. There was an Ultimatrix Mini. I don't really have anything to say about this one other than it just looks crappy. It does, however, have a display wheel just like the Omnitrix FX, which is pretty surprising to see. They also had the Viewscope Ultimatrix, where the emblem would drastically stick out and have a cylinder of alien images in it. I really dislike this one. The gimmick is just so bad. There was also the Revolution Ultimatrix, where you could shove tiny alien figurines into the watch and they'd pop out spinning, which I guess makes it like a Beyblade Ultimatrix. Again, a lame gimmick, so a lame toy. They also had a Battle Ultimatrix, where you'd shove discs into the body, similar to the Disc Ultimatrix, but they'd launch themselves off of the watch. Another lame gimmick. They also released an Ultimate Ultimatrix, where they made the shell transparent, and I just don't understand why people would like that. Not only is it not like the show's watch because of this, but there's no popping action to pretend you're selecting an alien, which is kind of lame. The main Alien Force Omnitrix is called the Ultimate Omnitrix, which makes me believe this Ultimate Ultimatrix is supposed to be the definitive Ultimate Alien watch. But I can't agree with that idea. The Disc Ultimatrix is definitely still the best version. There were a lot of Omniverse spin-off watches. First, I'll get the other version of the Omnitrix Touch out of the way. I have the first version, but they actually made a second one. It was exactly the same as the first version, except it had white paint instead of silver, which I guess makes it more like the show's watch, but they made it out of green transparent plastic. You already know how I feel about that kind of stuff, so this is immediately garbage. There was a version called the Omnitrix AI. I have to say, this one is pretty bad. In the show and the better Omnitrix toys, the top slid over to reveal the emblem. This toy just had a bulky hinged cap. It also had a display wheel just like the FX watch and the Ultimatrix Mini. Yeah, it's definitely not as good as the Omnitrix Touch. I didn't even mention the strap. It's just a hunk of green plastic that doesn't match the body of the watch. It's a disgrace. Get it out of my face. There was also an Omnitrix Challenge. The gimmick was that it came with tiny figures that you could insert into the watch. You could have up to 3 in it, and when you activated it, one of the 3 figures would pathetically pop out. From the videos I saw, each figure was worth a certain number of points. You'd play with a friend that, for some reason, had this version of the watch as well. Whoever popped the figurine with more points would win the round. Basically rock, paper, scissors, but unnecessarily complicated. I honestly feel bad knowing this was a thing. Because of the awful gimmick, the watch's top popped up instead of slid, and it didn't even have the emblem, just this empty void. They even made a second version of this, only difference being that it had white paint instead of silver, just like the Touch, and it came with different alien figures. there was a version called the Omnitrix Shuffle. It was pretty much the exact same model as the touch version, but it had little alien holograms like the Alien Force watch. That's not what the Omniverse Omnitrix did, so what's the point of getting this version? There was also the OmniLink Omnitrix. The gimmick of this one was that you could connect it to a Ben 10 Omniverse app on a smart device, and it even came with the DVD where the watch could interact with it. The DVD just had some clips from the show and it would unlock certain sounds on the watch. I think this was a little unnecessary. It didn't need to have such a weird gimmick. I will admit, the OmniLink does look the cleanest out of all the Omniverse watches. However, it is just as bulky, if not bulkier, than the touch and shuffle versions. I do have to give the shuffle and OmniLink credit though. The button that opens the watch up is at the bottom of the body. They put it on the side for the touch, which I honestly found pretty dumb. And now for the final Omniverse Omnitrix toy, the disc launcher. Look at this thing. It's literally just a party favor that you'd get from some 8-year-old's Ben 10 themed birthday party. I make this comparison not only because of its functionality, but for the way they designed the strap. It looks so cheap. It's even worse than the AI watch. I wouldn't have been surprised if they released an Omnitrix that was literally just one of those tiny plastic mazes with the metal balls. Jeez, you can really see the decline of the franchise through the sheer number of Omnitrix toys they've made. Ultimate Alien started this decline. They only had 2 versions of the Alien Force Omnitrix. Ultimate Alien had 5. Omniverse had 6. 8 if you count the second versions of the Touch and Challenge. Omniverse was losing its funding because of declining toy sales. Did they really think making a bunch of these gimmicky watches no one wanted would save them? Anyway, my issue with these spin-off watches is that if it doesn't emulate the behavior of the show's watch, why get it? I want to pretend I'm turning into an alien with the watches, not shoot tiny plastic discs out of them, project slides, or interact with an app so it can make a certain noise. This is where I'd end the video, but I have to talk about the reboot. Obviously, they made an Omnitrix toy for the reboot, but just like the reboot, it paled in comparison to the original. I mean, just look at it. It honestly looks really cheap, and it's even bulkier than the Omniverse Omnitrices. They actually made 2 versions of the reboot watch, a basic and deluxe version. The basic one is what I've just shown you. The deluxe version is honestly worse. It's even bulkier than the basic version, and the center part just looks so bad. They actually attempted to do the whole hourglass to rhombus thing, but it just didn't look good. They also created a version based on the Season 3 redesign, and of course, they had to make a disc launcher and projector watch too. There was also the Omni Launch Battle Omnitrix. It looks kinda dumb. Let's see what it does. What?! That was amazing! I mean, this is stupid. When you fold the figures up and put it in the watch, the emblem looks all messed up with the notches. Lame toy. I really miss Ben 10. Those shows were part of my childhood. The reboot's not my cup of tea, but I can see why kids would enjoy it. One thing's for sure, those reboot toy watches are crappy. At least the previous 4 shows had some good ones among the sea of bad ones.